You're right that facing up to the limits on our freedom explodes a number of persistent myths surrounding individual responsibility, justice, political democracy, and the market. Some of these myths persist because they advance the interests of those in power, others because they flatter us, offering false comfort. All come at a price. Each is based on assumptions about the world, some of which fly in the face of evidence and logic. Do we believe in myths or lies that lack evidence, are completely absent of logic and reason, and simultaneously keep us from being free?
I think so. So this is one of the key ideas of my book. I try and explore at least two fundamental myths about freedom, which I think lie at the heart of our society. And the first is this idea of the complete autonomy and responsibility of the individual, about how much power we actually have over our identities and who we are. I think that it's grossly exaggerated in our society, and the conditions which shape us are almost completely ignored, thereby just removing responsibility of the wider society for creating individuals. So I think the most fundamental, most important aspect or function of any society is the production of individuals. You know, what kind of people are you going to create? What kind of values are they going to have? What kind of habits are they going to develop? And that's really something which is decided and produced by the set of institutions in your society, your education system, your family, the kinds of religions you have, the media. These produce particular people with particular beliefs, particular ways of perceiving the world. Now, from within that framework of looking at the world, any one individual, it feels very natural. It feels like they're their own beliefs, that in a sense they've created those beliefs. But it's a bit of an illusion. I mean, take any baby born in America and move it to other parts of the world. So, for example, take a baby born in New York, and if you moved that baby to Palestine, they're going to see the world very differently. They're going to grow up with a very different set of beliefs and loyalties and values. And if you move it to China and Spain and elsewhere, each time you're going to get a very different kind of cultural environment. So I think one myth which we do need to look at very seriously and hopefully overcome is this kind of myth of the autonomous individual, kind of disconnected from their society and their culture and their race and their opportunities and their class and all the rest. I think that's a dangerous myth, and I think it actually feeds into the grossly unequal society that we have. It appears to legitimize the idea that the rich deserve their wealth and the poor deserve their poverty, and we can blame the criminals and praise those who succeed, at least according to the values of our system. So I think that's the first myth, and there's much more to say about all of that, but I'll move on. The second myth, I think, is about free markets. There's been this really embedded idea at the heart of our culture now, I'd say at least since, for a good century, but a kind of more potent form for the last 40 years, that free markets produce freedom, and they produce political freedom. They're one and the same. You know, if you want a well-functioning democracy, then you need to free up the markets. I think it's a very dangerous idea. I mean, there are so many elements of markets which are amoral. They have a strong tendency to concentrate wealth. They have massive externalities, which means that a lot of transactions which take place in the market produce these huge costs, such as environmental devastation, which are grossly inefficient and very damaging to society, and undermine the idea that markets actually are good at allocating in an efficient way resources across society. And the concentrations of wealth that it produces just removes power from the democratic political realm and gives it to private entities like corporations and individuals. So, as you'll be amply aware of, in the United States, mass media is owned by a handful of major corporations, and they control most TV, most film, most newspaper, most radio, and that's an incredible amount of power. And so what you're getting is a filtered version of reality, filtered through the lens of profit-seeking corporations. And so to leave these core functions of society, like delivering news, educating people, running prisons, and on, to leave those core functions to profit-seeking entities whose only function legally is to maximize profit for their shareholders, creates a huge kind of conflict of interest, which seriously erodes the possibility for a meaningful democracy in which people have a say of their lives, people are able to take part and participate in making the decisions that truly affect their lives. So I think these two myths about free markets and the over-exaggeration of the freedom of the individual, I think they come together to help to justify and legitimize a grossly unequal system, and one which is quite inefficient and in many ways irrational, because it doesn't help us realize the goals which as a society so many of us hold, clear goals, just a safer world for our children, one in which we don't destroy the environment, one in which there is a degree of equality, and it doesn't all just come down to, well, if you're born into a rich family and you inherit millions, then you're going to have this kind of life, and if you're born over here, then there's a very high chance that you're going to end up in prison, where that kind of birth isn't destiny. So yes, that's what's drawn me to trying to expose some of these myths surrounding freedom, so that actually we can work to creating a more meaningful freedom.